generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN.
I am Randy Moss with NBC Sports and the Buyer Speed Figure Group.
Zoe Cadman with First Racing and First TV, finally here ensconced in Saratoga in the Brennan household. And right there, you finally get to see Doodle. He's about as alive as Lucy right now. Can you see him? That little blonde. Yeah, they look about separated at birth. Two very old, very quiet dogs.
Yes.
Well, soon Randy Moss will be getting on a plane to Newark to come down to beautiful Oceanport, New Jersey, and watch the Haskell for the NBC team, which he is, of course, a huge part of it. We have to always preface this. We're taping this today on Tuesday. The entries will not be taken until later today. So if we say something stupid or doesn't make any sense, that's because we don't have the official entries yet, but we try to do the best we can, especially in this race, because there's really, I think, unless one of you two want to disagree with me, it looks like there's three horses that stand out above the rest: Journalism, Gosper, and Burnham Square. You have each one of them has solid credentials, has reasons why they could run well, reasons why they might not run well. Looks like the other filler horses in the race are just trying to get, kind of like have Haskell fever. They want to have a good time, and hopefully they'll get lucky with their horses. But Randy, I want to ask you this. This is where I want to start off. And I love the way they campaign journalism. This is almost like vintage how to campaign a horse from like the 20 years ago or something. I mean, running all three Triple Crown races and now the Monmouth Haskell. And they haven't said as much, but probably the Travers too. But having said that, there be any worry that he's over the top? Is that it has been too much racing?
If it was a normal horse, yeah. So I suppose there has to be some concern about that, because he's not only had a lot of racing, he's had a lot of tough races, a lot of really hard fought races. But then on the other hand, he certainly gives the impression of sort of a throwback kind of horse that can handle that kind of a schedule, right? I mean, you got to put trust in Michael McCarthy, who knows what he's doing, certainly one of the best trainers in the country. And he has not hesitated to put journalism on this course. So, I mean, clearly, if he runs anything close to what he ran, not just in the Triple Crown, but going back to the Santa Anita Derby and the San Felipe before that, then journalism would deserve to be a solid favorite in the Haskell.
Yeah, he is without question the horse to beat. And it's funny, I thought the same thing as you, Bill, when the pre-entries, so to speak, popped up. I was like, it feels just like yesterday that we saw him run in the Belmont. It just doesn't seem that long ago, and it's really not. He's only had 3 recorded workouts at Santa Anita. 6:29, he worked 47-4. 7-6, he worked 47-2. And then on the 12th of July, he had his first 6 furlong work in 112 and change. Obviously, these are good works with good gallop outs because he's a high energy horse. I've been privy to see him firsthand at Santa Anita a couple of weeks ago. I just happened to be yapping to Michael McCarthy. And I'm like, he was timing a horse galloping down the backside. And I said, who's that? Because I couldn't really see. It was all the way on the backside. He said, oh, just a little horse called Journalism. I said, do you often time his gallops? And he said, about once a week, just to make sure he's not going deceivingly fast. And he was like knocking off like 18, 17, 16. He was just doing a perfect gallop. But high energy, as always. And he might just be the ultimate throwback horse that we've ever seen. Now, Bob's running, I believe, goal-orientated in there, who has fired some warning shots with some bullets in the morning. He threw down a 58 flat on the 4th of July under Drayden Van Dyke, following a horse who was one of Randy's fastest maidens in Southern Gentleman, and blew the doors off him going in 58. And he looks like the real deal, and he's just kind of a green big baby, doesn't really know what's going on yet. he's going to throw his hat in the ring in a big way. But honestly, it's journalism's race to lose. Let's be honest about it.
I would put Goal Oriented as sort of the co-third horse in that list, along with Burnham Square. Goal Oriented, of course, was the horse ridden by Flavien Prat in the Preakness, who was trying to keep journalism from getting through that opening at the top of the stretch in that rugby scrum. The 1, 2, 4 finishers from the Pegasus at Monmouth, the prep for the Haskell, the local prep. That would be Bracket Buster, Wild and Crazy Night, and National Law. Also expected to run. The Delaware Derby winner, Kentucky Outlaw, is on the list as a probable. And the Ohio Derby winner, Moplex, might run for Jeremiah Englehart. But, I mean, all those horses obviously would take a huge hind seat to journalism.
Guys, well, if there's a big 3 or a big 3.5 in the race, the other one is Gosker, who is second behind journalism in the Preakness. And to me, from a handicapping standpoint, I kind of look at him as the opposite of journalism. He's the lightly raced horse who seems to get better every single time out. He's only had 4 lifetime starts. He won the Lexington, and he looked like he was home free in the Preakness until journalism got out of that jackpot and then mowed him down like nothing. But I would not be the least bit surprised to see him improve 4 or 5 lengths, Zoe. And if that's the case, I think he can give journalism all he can handle.
I mean, if journalism doesn't bring his A game, it'll be a very good race. If journalism has his A or even his A- game, he wins it, no questions asked.
Yeah, totally agree. And by the way, Bill, you mentioned I was flying into Newark. I'm actually going to fly into New York. I don't like what I've been reading in the papers about the Newark air traffic control being run by floppy disks. So I'm going to drive a little bit longer and go into JFK.
Okay,
you need to talk to Sue Finley about Newark Airport. I guess she was on a plane yesterday for 8 hours.
And never got anywhere. I had to go home. So yes, not a fun time to be flying. Okay, so now I've got it. One more thing about journalism. I talked to Aaron Wellman during the week, and I said, Aaron, in all due respects, are you maybe ducking sovereignty by going into the Haskell? He says, absolutely not. He says, we don't take into consideration where that horse is running and anything we do to make plans for journalism. He says, look, the Jim Dandy's a $500,000 grade 2 race. The Haskell's a $1 million grade 1 race. It makes all the sense in the world to run in the Haskell and not in the Jim Dandy. And I don't think this was owner speak. I really think I believe him. The question becomes, do they both have, good races, journalism in the Haskell and sovereignty in the Jim Dandy? And then we could have them meet again in the Travers. And actually, if that happens, this is the closest thing we've had to a real rivalry in quite some time.
Yeah, totally agree. And of course, that'll all depend on how journalism A, runs in the Haskell, and B, how he bounces back out of the Haskell. But that would be really cool.
I'm not used to this totally agreement, Randy. Are you feeling okay?
Oh, I've got some disagreements coming up, Zoe, I'm sure.
All right. Well, do you want to disagree with me on the Coaching Club American Oaks, where I think LaCara will win wire to wire? I think Immersive, although beaten just a neck last time out, and did have a little bit of a rough trip for a while, she looks to me like a horse that hasn't trained on. She's running an 83 buyer figure in the Spinaway last August, and now she comes out in the Monomoy Girl and was second beating the neck with an 85 buyer. She just doesn't seem to have made that transition. Now, can she win? Of course she can win. She's a tremendous horse. But LaCara is pretty good, too. She won the Acorn by 3. She won the Ashland by 1 length and a quarter. And then the Kentucky Oaks is just a little bit too much for her. But is there anything I said there that you want to disagree with, Randy?
Not really. I mean, look, I think I'm looking at past performances right now, so that's why I'm not looking at the camera. Sorry. There is a horse a couple of post positions to the inside of LaCara who could conceivably give her a run on the front end, trained by Chad Summers. Do you have the horse's name there on your best performance? Dry Powder. Dry Powder comes off of a 1 mile race, 1 mile race at Aqueduct, in which it was extremely hot paced, and she still hung in there pretty gamely. But if La Cara gets challenged early by Dry Power, and if Dry Power is indeed fast enough to keep La Cara from getting a clear early lead, then that really throws a monkey wrench into La Cara's chances to win, because she is the kind of horse on paper that really needs to have the early lead to win, I think, at 1 1/8 miles. She didn't finish all that strongly when she won her last race, but she won convincingly. So I think she is vulnerable if she's challenged early. Now, I agree with you about Immersive. I thought she gave me the impression of the kind of filly that really didn't do a lot of maturing from age 2 to age 3, at least from a numbers perspective. She had a little bit of a dicey trip early in that last race at Churchill Downs, but then she got through along the rail turning for home, actually had a half length on Take Charge Milady, and Take Charge Milady battled back and outgamed her to the wire. Both of those horses, didn't run that fast. I would take a shot, honestly, at a price with Scottish Lassie. I don't think she really is a 1 1/8 miles kind of horse, but if La Cara is hooked early, and if Immersive and Take Charge Lady are really no better than their mid-80s numbers last time, then that really throws this race wide open. And I think Scottish Lassie could have a chance at 10-1, maybe. Might be a good price.
And she's doing really, really well here at Saratoga. TT's always been high on her. That's Jorge Abreu. He's still high on her. That 90 by a speed figure as a 2-year-old jumps off the page. So, she's got the numbers to improve. As far as Immersive is concerned, I'm liable to give her one more shot as a 3-year-old. That was a lot to ask coming off the layoff. She is a champion for a reason. So I would give her one more shot. Yes, she should have won that race, no question. But maybe the screws went all the way tight. I don't really know what to think of her. I will say one thing. What about Bernardini as a broodmare sire? Bernardini, the broodmare sire of not only Immersive here, but also La Cara. He's really stamped a name for himself as being one of the best broodmare sires that I think we've ever seen. So it's going to be a very good race, inside to outside, and there could be a price that pops up by the name of Scottish Lassie.
All right. And of course, let's not forget that the best thing to come out of New Jersey since Bruce Springsteen, Bookham Dano will be in the Alfred Vanderbilt handicap. I had my book. I was told I couldn't wear my Bookham Dano t-shirt on the podcast today. I'll have to appeal that decision for maybe the next time he runs. But anyways, again, that's Alfred Vanderbilt is a very good race. But Bookham Dano, of course, is my favorite horse, just like Randy gets his favorite. So, and he's got an awful good shot on there. His race in the True North was tremendous.
Yeah, Nash is really clicking on all cylinders. I think that's the horse they have to worry the most about. But Dano, back.
Absolutely. That's actually going to be a really good race. And I'm rooting for Dano, but Baby Yoda is back at one of his most favorite tracks ever, and he can always throw one in. One of his main problems is kind of going back to back with big numbers. He'll get Dylan Davis to ride. Nash could well be the horse to beat in here, but Bookham Dano, he just brings it every time. And then you've got Mulligan in there for Jose. So we'll see what happens. But you should have worn your shirt. If he gets beat, Bill, I'm blaming you.
Oh, okay. Like grow a spine or something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Sometimes the boss is the boss is the boss, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I am on record saying that I had requested to wear my Bookham Dano t-shirt for this podcast today. And if he wins this week, I don't give a crap what anyone says. I will wear it next week. How about that?
That's great. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Last year's Keeneland September sale produced 4 rising stars this past week alone. First off, Dr. Agni by Intermischief out of Champion Lady Eli won at first asking for trainer Cherie DeVoe at Saratoga. Later that day, Spectacular Grey was simply just that, running away from a field of maidens by 7 3/4 lengths. On Sunday at Woodbine, Two Out Hero was a runaway winner for his sire Warfront. And then on Monday, Glory Me broke her maiden at Alice Park. The filly was the 7th highest priced gun runner at the Keeneland September sale last fall. Get your own TDN Rising Star at the 2025 Keeneland September sale that runs from September the 8th through September the 20th.
It all comes down to this.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
The moment that defines the year, when the world's most influential buyers gather, and every decision, every bid, every opportunity shapes the future. At a marketplace that brings the thoroughbred world together, and where futures are forged, because every moment matters. At the World's Yearling Sale, Keeneland, September.
The fastest horse of the week brought to you by Nashville, one of those fast sires at Windstar Farm. Nashville, the Keeneland 6-furlong track record holder, had his first yearling sell and sell well at Fasig-Tipton, July. This was Hip 80, the colt out of Lil V, who sold to Ben Gowan's agent for $200,000. And Hip 6, a filly out of Pure Wow, sold for $140,000 to Back Ring Bloodstock. And of course, Nashville will have more first crop yearlings on offer coming up at Saratoga. So this week's fastest horse of the week is a Chad Brown combo platter. 2 Brown trainees recorded buyer speed figures of 102, both on Saturday at Saratoga in the Diana. Excellent Truth edged She Feels Pretty, the favorite, after a spirited stretch battle to give Brown a 10th victory in that Grade 1 stakes. Excellent Truth had previously run twice in the U.S. since being purchased by Resolute Racing's John Stewart. She was second, a close second, in both the Ginny Wiley and the Just a Game. The other 102 came 4 races earlier Saturday. Malarchuk won a 1 1/8 allowance. On dirt, Malarchuk has now won 2 straight at Saratoga, the first by DQ, with buyer speed figures of 101 and now 102.
Welcome in now our Gainesway Guest of the Week. It is Tom Rooney, the president and CEO of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association. He was a man who wears many hats, but one of them primarily is to be a lobbyist for horse racing in Washington. And I'm sure that's kept him busy over the last couple of weeks with what is going on with the tariffs. And let's start, first of all, because it's story for laymen like us, it's kind of hard to follow because it seems like the story changes every single day. But as I understand it right now, President Trump has proposed a 30% tariff on Japan, the EU, and Canada. Is that still the case? And will racehorses be exempt from that?
I think Mexico is included with that too. But it obviously, if there's purchases, in those countries where there's an attempt to bring that horse back to the U.S., it's going to affect it. But there are exceptions with eventing or things like racing and potentially breeding, where there's a certain amount of time that you're not technically being brought into the country as a good for a permanent stay. Like in a case like the Breeders' Cup or something, or the Japanese horses coming in, if Japan was part of that. They should be okay. There's a time limit. It's usually like a year, but it's been, I can't think of a better word than it's just been exhausting trying to navigate. We had, the panic button going, earlier this year, specifically with Canada and, the farms up there, the racetracks up there, a lot of those farms that come down to Lexington to breed. What's it going to mean? How much is it going to cost when they get to the border? We had to find out all that stuff. And then he canceled it like right before. So it was all like, never mind, forget it. And then so we keep coming back to, well, it might be the EU, it might be Mexico, it might be this country or that country. So we're monitoring it. And if they actually take effect, I feel pretty confident that we have kind of like the metrics that we can tell the folks that are affected how much it's actually going to cost. But the bottom line is it's really the purchase and sale of horses that would be affected the most. We believe that racing and breeding, for the most part, wouldn't be affected.
So, as I understand it, is it a 30% tariff on August 1st? And what specific countries is he targeting? Is France on there?
Yeah, the EU's on there, so it would be. And, I remember one of the last interactions I had with the late, great Christophe Clement was about this issue and what's going to happen. Yeah, and what's going to happen in at the sale in France. So we did a lot of due diligence there, and it was essentially that. And then that iteration did not come to pass; it was delayed. And so it is somewhat frustrating to try to plan this way and to get ready to go over to one of those sales, whether it be in England or Ireland or France or wherever, and game plan and look at pedigrees and try to figure out if you're going to buy a horse, if there's going to be a tariff or not. It just is such a frustratingly moving target that, we have to just keep an eye on and see if he delays it again. He said, I think his words were something like, it's definitely August 1st unless he changes his mind. And when the stock market crashes or goes down and then he delays it and the stock market goes back up, you think, okay, well, he's not going to do that again, but then he does. And, but we at our office are on top of what the actual costs will be should these tariffs actually go in effect.
Well, the sport is very lucky to have someone with your political experience at the head of the NTRA, but you must feel like at times like the Dutch boy in the dike. I mean, there are tariffs, then there aren't tariffs, then there are tariffs. Oops, there's an ice raid at Delta Downs. Oops, Guess what's in the one big, beautiful bill about gambling, right? I mean, my gosh, It's one thing after another after another.
That week when the House sent the Senate their version of the big, beautiful bill, and then we worked the Senate to get the 100% bonus depreciation permanent, and we accomplished that. But then we found out that there was this glitch from what you guys may remember under the Biden administration, which was called the Build Back Better bill. I don't know what's with these 3 Bs, but all these bills sound the same. But he essentially, that administration had in there a clause that would basically negate the 100% bonus depreciation. So we found that was, even though there was 100% bonus depreciation that was permanent, that it would be negated from this other clause 461. So we had to go to the majority leader, Senator Thune's office, and we had to go to Senator Crapo's office and all these offices and tell them, like, this is a leftover from the Biden administration. The first Trump bill back in 2017, when I was still in Congress, didn't include this. And one of the reasons why we think that it was in there was because, they needed to show that they, weren't cutting or spending, I should say, as much. And this was $25 billion that somehow didn't get, cut out of the Build Back Better bill. But for those of us in this business, it was very important that it was part of the bill, because essentially, and I don't know, if it's okay if I continue to try to explain this, but essentially for those horse owners that say that you made a lot of money in your life in business and you sold your business and then you invested all your money essentially in the stock market, and with whatever you make in the stock market, you start buying horses. There's a lot of people in our business, as you all know, that fit that category. And so they don't have any other business expenses except their horse business. With this one clause that we were worried about, if the only income that you had was from basically the stock market, the most that you could write off was $250,000. You had 100% bonus depreciation, but if it couldn't fall into another business, then you are capped at 250,000, which if you look at some of these guys that goes to these sales and they've got a lot of money in the bank because they already sold their business that they built, and now they were just living off of stock dividends or whatever, it was capped. And so we had to get it uncapped so they could write off 100% of whatever they were buying at the sales. And we were successful doing that. It was a major victory for really the sales. But for those types of people that, have gotten to a point in their life where, the horse business is their only business. And this just doesn't include buying horses. It's buying farms, everything that goes within the farm, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of people that fit into that category. And so, and to have it permanent, to know that it's going to be there unless, it's voted to be overturned in some future Congress with a future president, as opposed to the last time we did this in 2017, it was tiered every year, went down 20%. So that was a nice victory, and it was nice to get that change. But we were also given the language from the Senate back to the House, which was just to concur. And Randy, this goes to one of the things that you were talking about. It reduced the amount that people that gamble from 100% to 90%. People were calling my office like, can you offer an amendment? Can you get somebody to offer an amendment? And there was no amending this bill. This was either take it or leave it. Like, you had to vote to concur or not concur. This wasn't, the House already had their crack at it. The Senate had their crack at it. Now is the House to concur or not to concur. So that was sort of like slipped in there at the dead of night. We had no indication that was coming. Nobody did. Not us, not the casino people, not the poker people. Nobody knew that was going to happen. And so that was the downside of the big, beautiful bill. But luckily there's a new piece of legislation called the Fair Bet Act by Representative Titus of Las Vegas that fixes that. So we've signed on to that. They're getting a lot of co-sponsors, and so we'll keep working that issue over the next this Congress.
My gosh. The immigration situation,
yeah,
right? Which might be the most dangerous of all of this to the future of horse racing. What can be done? I mean, talk to somebody who can talk to somebody who then can talk to President Trump and maybe in some way forgive what's going on with immigration on the backsides of racetracks. I mean, what can be done there?
I can only tell you what I've done. And what I've done is I have people that work at the Department of Homeland Security that I worked with when I was in Congress. And I asked them specifically after Delta Downs, are you guys targeting us? Are you going to target us? And they assured me that they're not, that was a coordinated effort with the Louisiana law enforcement agency, whoever cooperated with them to go into Delta Downs. They were supposedly only looking for a few people that were had committed crimes other than their illegal status. And then they end up rounding up like 80 more people. So I just wanted some sort of, assurance that racing wasn't being targeted. And this person assured me that we weren't. What they were looking for were people, first and foremost, there was 3 categories. First and foremost, people that have warrants out for their arrest other than being an illegal or here illegally or overstaying their visa or what have you. So people that committed other crimes, essentially. Secondly, if they feel like those people exist at places of employment like a racetrack, they will get with that racetrack and they will say, we need your list of employees, and we're going to check them to make sure that they're here legally. If they're not, we're going to ask you to give them to us, or we're going to come get them. Now, most racetracks are private property, keep in mind. So, you can't come in without a warrant. Now, there is others that aren't, like Monmouth or Del Mar or any of the ones that are run by the state. So there's differences of what law enforcement can and can't do when they come in. And then the third category was just the people that are outside of Home Depot looking to get picked up to get, work for that day. And that was, not as high on their list. But since then, they've left us alone. So, I mean, it's good. But I called him back the next day and I said, hey, just one more little point here. Apparently anybody can call DHS and tip them off that, like, there's people that are working at this construction site or something that I think are here illegally. And that's like kind of like the tip off program to go in there. We've got people that don't like racing that can say that, just to disrupt us and make our lives miserable. And he's like, I understand. So hopefully Delta Downs was an anomaly. And it's not something that, we have to deal with time and time again. You mentioned
that obviously they're not allowed to go into privately owned racetracks, but you mentioned Del Mar, that they could, like, realistically just walk into Del Mar because it's open to the public.
There are restricted spaces even within publicly owned. That's getting into the weeds, but like if there's parts of publicly owned areas at the track that are cordoned off, like, with a locked gate or something like that, or like specifically the dormitory, if there's a dormitory on a racetrack that's publicly owned and it's locked, you can't necessarily just go in there and say, this is a public dorm, I'm coming in. There is reasonable expectations of privacy, even in publicly owned places to an extent. Well, generally speaking, that property as a whole is publicly owned land, but there are cases, there's case law which show that even in places like that, some people may have a reasonable expectation of privacy that the courts have upheld.
Tom, I wanted to get back to the provision where you can only deduct 90% of your losses from your gambling earnings. And first of all, how is this enforceable? I go to the track every Saturday. I'm a medium-sized bettor. At the end of the year, I have returned $80,000 and lost $75,000. So therefore, when the 90% tax comes in, I would owe the IRS money. What ability do they have to, except for maybe the biggest bettors around, what ability do they have to actually like follow that? And is it just going to be up to people to do this because they want to be honest about paying their taxes?
Yeah, that's it. It's the big gamblers that actually go to their accountants and try to incorporate this in their yearly taxes. So, those of us like me, I don't gamble that much. I own race horses, so that's enough lost money for me. But for people that are professional gamblers that actually go to their accountants at the end of the year and they show what their profits are, what their losses are, and what they can, I guess, prove through their taxes is what the number is going to be. I even, I was talking with an accountant about people bring in their losing tickets and Jen Shaw, who you all may know from Dean Dorton in Lexington. So it's like there was a day where people were coming in with their shoe boxes of tickets, and it's mind blowing to me that
I've done it.
That's acceptable, but apparently, that's all part of the deal. And we did we heard a rumor that the reason why that this happened is they were looking for money for wherever they could get. So the one depreciation thing that I had already talked about was $25 billion. And when we went to the Senate, they're like, well, you're going to have to find up $25 billion somewhere else so that we can do this for you. And so, we were able to figure out how to do that. But then when this came in, it was $1 billion they thought that they were going to be able to make through reducing it from 100% to 90%. But then that begs the question, maybe people won't bet as much if they're not able to, write off as much of a loss. But we'll see. I mean, it was just one of those things that was thrown in there at the last second. We couldn't change it. And, there were so many other things in this bill that I don't think people were going to vote, like Andy Barr or anybody even from Kentucky were going to vote against it because of that. But now we have our next project that we're working on. So
Back in the day, Tom. Go ahead. Well,
another question on that is: in any way, shape, or form, will this 90% deal affect the CAW players? My guess would be no, because they're all offshore, and I don't know if I'm sure their bank accounts, their betting accounts, et But is there any thought that this could come back and bite these guys?
I mean, if they're not offshore, if they're here, I mean, I visited a place in Las Vegas, Nevada, that didn't look like it was offshore to me. And so, I mean, if they are going and they're putting this as part of their year-end tax, I assume it is going to affect them. So, like I said, anybody that's claiming this loss as a gambler, and I think that they'd certainly qualify, would be affected by it.
A 10% loss on taxes would easily wipe out a 10% rebate. So that, I could see where that would be.
Yeah.
Back in the day, Tom, I knew professional gamblers that would keep a loose leaf notebook. And every day they would write down the bets they made, the winning and the losing bets, and they would take their losing tickets and scotch tape them to the notebook page. And then at the end of the year, they would take that into their account. Now, of course, with all the ADW play, it's much easier online to keep up with everything like that. But
right. I actually had this conversation with my son last night because he has an account to bet on sports or whatever, and he does the little parlays, but you can click on a button to look at your annual history. So it's much easier to see, if you're winning or losing or what have you. So.
Well,
so
Tom,
you've been. Go ahead, Zoe.
Do you see any light at the end of any of the tunnels?
Politics is a game that you have to play with the field that you're given, and this is the field that we're given, and there's a lot of curveballs with tariffs and immigration that keep you on your toes and create some anxiety. But then you have things like being able to do 100% bonus depreciation that's permanent, that gives the industry a little bit of confidence when it comes to buying horses. It's a never, and that's why, lobbyists get a bad name because of them having a lot of control. But, part of their business is that nothing is ever really solved. You have to have something next to work on. And if you don't have anything else to work on, then you don't have a job. So, no, this is all part of politics. I can tell you though, honestly, and whether you believe in it politically or not, this victory that we had with at least the bonus depreciation, we're about to lose. It was about to go to 0 next year. So we went from 100 to 80 to 60 to 40 to 20. It was about to go to 0, which means that you could write off none of your losses or expensing when you bought a horse or a farm or anything there. And so I think it was going to be a huge burden on our industry when that was going to happen. And I got elected in 2008. And I think that since then till now, there's probably been 3 days in my political life where I felt like we made a difference. And that was one of them. So it was, I think it was a huge victory, but there, like I said, there's other things that we now have to work on. We're constantly monitoring the immigration issue. We're constantly trying to, with a grain of salt, figure out what tariffs are going to really impact us or what's really going to happen or not happen. And but that's part of this job. I think that's why it's important, why the industry felt like the NTRA needed to have an office here in Washington, D.C.
Do you ever remember a time when the sport had this many legislative balls up in the air at the same time?
Well, I know that several years back they were able to, this office, but even though it was headquartered in Lexington at the time, was able to get the exotic bets made exotic rather than like all lumped in together. A trifecta was actually 3 bets rather than 1. So you wouldn't have to go to the IRS window as often because they were 3 separate bets. That was a nice little victory. But as far as just everything that we have to deal with, and these aren't horse specific, they affect everybody. It just so happens that these things that we've been working on, 100% bonus depreciation, immigration, tariffs, everybody's affected. The only thing that everybody's not affected by, the thing that we're working on, is this Fair Bet Act to get it back to 100% from 90% for gamblers. Everything else that we deal with is affecting the entire country as a whole. So we're part of, this we're part of this bigger picture together. But we have a lot of people on our team that work for people on my board that work here in Washington that work very hard every day to make sure that the committees that matter, the politicians that matter. I'm going to a meeting here after I meet with you, with Congressman Barr, and then I'm going to dinner with the Speaker of the House tonight. And this is all just like, hey, what do you do again? Oh, yeah, you work with racehorses. How's that going? You just got to constantly remind them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important. And that's our job. So, we'll keep it up.
Well, you look very dapper.
Thank you. I'm wearing my Oaklawn tie that I got at the gift shop, which, a little anecdote about Oaklawn, as we were talking about immigration. One of the things that the guy from Homeland Security told me is normally what they do is they call you and say, hey, you got 2 guys that are working for you there that are bad guys. They're wanted for really bad crimes. Will you turn them over? And they did. And that was the end of the story. So, I mean, you might see that. And that's way more acceptable than what happened at Delta Downs. Yeah. But, so those are two, there's different levels of what's happening going on, but hopefully it's more like the Oaklawn situation.
Okay, so I got a good question for you on that particular necktie. You go back to the Oaklawn gift shop next year, you find out that necktie was manufactured in China. You have to pay a tariff on it.
No, because I already bought it. So
okay, the new one you're going to buy this year.
Was that a Charles Sella designed necktie? Those were. There you go.
He told me that it was. I don't know what horse this was for.
Okay.
But it says the 100th. So
that's a good
100th Arkansas Derby. Whoever won that one.
Right.
I'm sure, Randy, you don't know that. What the hell?
Zoe, I've got a whole closet full of Oaklawn ties that Charles Sella designed personally that were made in Italy.
There you go. Well, EU, now you got to pay a tariff on them.
Yep. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. See how it goes.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for the work you're doing on behalf of the industry. There's a lot of balls up in the air, and let's hope at the end of the day things come out to be at least satisfactory so far as where we're going with the all the various problems with the big, beautiful bill and whatnot. And maybe we'll check in with you again in a couple of months to get an update on it. Thanks for being our guest today on the Gainesway Guest of the Week.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Our guest of the week, Tom Rooney, was brought to you by Gainesway, the home of stallions like Caracante. This weekend, Caracante was represented by the filly Roja, owned by Eclipse Thoroughbreds and Mataket Stables. Roja got her first stakes victory in the Blue Sparklers Stakes at Monmouth Park. Also this weekend, Caracante had his highest earning lifetime performer on the big stage at Saratoga. We mentioned earlier, She Feels Pretty came up just short of getting her 4th straight Grade 1 stakes win in the Diana, just ahead behind Excellent Truth. But obviously, She Feels Pretty has an exciting season still ahead of her. Caracante stands for $15,000 at Gainesway Farm. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
The sun shines bright on Caracante. His first crops of racing age are showing brilliance on the racetrack with a high percentage of stakes winners. His versatility is evidenced by winners on all surfaces across the globe.
Spandarella could not have been more impressive.
She feels more than pretty. She feels fantastic.
It is all She Feels Pretty. The sun shines bright on this value sire. Caracante, standing at Gainesway.
Well, the official opening of the official Saratoga meet got underway last week. You might call it the 3rd opening day of the season, all the other racing they've been doing up there. But as so often happens, the story is not necessarily what happens on the racetrack. It's what happens with the weather. And, for somebody who went up there for 25 straight years, I still know firsthand. I mean, it could be at 8:00 in the morning, sunny and dry, and then at 8:30 they could have 2 inches of rain. It's just unbelievable the deluges as they get, and that happened on Saturday. We had a really good card lined up for Saturday with the Diana and the Bowling Green as the feature races. A couple really interesting maiden races. They took all the races off the grass except for the 2 stakes races, and there was 56 scratches on the card. They handled $22 million. Well, what track wouldn't be happy with $22 million handle? That's great for just about everybody in the world. But in 2024, they handled $33 million. So they lost about $11 million in handle. The next day, the previous day, they also lost a lot of handle. So they're off to a horrible start. Now, I want to bring up something that people are going to think I'm crazy, and that's fine. But we heard this first from David O'Rourke on our podcast. The one thing that could solve all of Saratoga's problems is do what Gulfstream did, put in a synthetic track. Races are off the turf. You go to the synthetic turf. The 12-horse race, instead of scratching down to 4, scratches down to 10, and you have a good race. O'Rourke told us last week that you can't fit another track on the main side of the road at the main grandstand. There's just no more room. But he himself suggested that maybe we could make the training track at Oklahoma, the dirt training track, into a Topeka course and run the races over there. Now, that would be a logistical nightmare, all the going back and forth and everything. You have to get steward stands built there and everything. But you know what? If you're going to keep losing and having days where you lose $11 million in handle, it's going to pay for itself within one meet. I think it's a good idea. Am I crazy, Zoe?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Randy, go ahead. Why?
No, Zoe, go ahead.
Well, first off, opening day is not the same because they had the 4th of July festival. So you're not going to get the same numbers that you perhaps got a couple of years ago. Opening day was good weather, and that was perfect. Secondly, as far as the rain is concerned, yes, it absolutely pissed down. It rained for about an hour and a half, got some hail in some spots. Basically, as soon as the last race went off, on opening day, it rained for an hour and a half. But that was kind of it. And if you look at the times of the races that they ran on the turf course, it wasn't that bad. Now, those races were later in the day, and I can understand taking some of the races off the turf, but you're carding 6 turf races a day, right? You know it's going to rain. Perhaps you need to rework something, not card as many, perhaps card some all later. And as fast as the Diana ran, as fast as the Quick Call ran, they weren't ripping up the turf course. We've only got 40 days of racing. Run on the turf. You don't have to run every race on the grass, but they could have run a couple more races than they did, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not saying it didn't rain, because it stormed and it rained really hard. And you could not have run those races at 10 o'clock in the morning. But it dried out throughout the day. And look at the time of the Diana. I don't have it down in front of me, but it was a good time. Quick fractions. The Quick Call, good fractions, maybe half a second off of what it should have been, but not the yielding they were calling it. So I don't know what the answer is. As far as running over there, you answered your own question. It's a logistical nightmare to run on that side. And you need 2 dirt tracks here at Saratoga to train on, because there are so many horses here. You can't have them all wanting to train on dirt on the main track. That's going to give you problems with the base of the main track during the meet with that many horses training on it, because there's a lot of old school trainers here that want to train on dirt. They don't want to train on the synthetic. And I love the synthetic, but I get it. I really do.
Zoe, I'm glad you brought up what you did, because the track condition, the course condition for the Diana was good. Now, correct. That's not firm, but it's not soft. It's not correct. Yielding. And the Bowling Green, it was listed as yielding. But I totally agree with you. Don't be such mamby-pambies about, taking these races off the grass all the time. If the course was good enough to be labeled good in the Diana, you definitely could have run. They dropped 5 grass races off the card. You definitely could have run another 2 or 3 on the grass without a doubt. From a jockey standpoint, I know you didn't walk over the course, but would you have had any problem with that?
No, and I get it if they're taking them off because it's not safe. I totally get that. don't run any races on it. If you think sometimes the rain will cause it to be a little bit slippy on the top and still firm underneath. I totally get that. But the fact that the Quick Call and the Diana were run under good conditions with good times, there were not footballs coming up. You got 2 turf courses, multiple lanes, and yes, we're going to have tons of turf racing. I get it, but it's still going to rain throughout the meet.
All right. Opinions. I'm not going to second guess the track superintendent at Saratoga, who knows more about his turf course than any of us. And no one has more incentive to keep races on the turf than the New York Racing Association. So even though I'm usually the dissident in all things like this, I'm going to just go along with their decisions on what races to keep on the turf and what races not to. Because I guess I have nothing better to do, I pulled out my book of ancient past performances as if I expected to see anything different. Weather, sloppy tracks, muddy tracks, heavy tracks, slow tracks, good tracks have always been an issue at Saratoga going back to the 1800s. And it's always going to be unless they put a dome on top of the racetrack, right? The only answer is Tapeta. If you want to keep these races from scratching down to 3 or 4 or 5 horse fields, that's it. That's really the only solution. I mean, look at, you mentioned Gulfstream, look at Woodbine. On Saturday, as far as I'm concerned, Woodbine might have set a North American record with 7 races off the turf. And those all switched, obviously, to Woodbine's main track, which is Tapeta. And they had big fields, and it was very formful racing. Now, but how do you do that at Saratoga? The Oklahoma thing, I think David O'Rourke was just spitballing. I mean, I think that's a crazy idea. Just if nothing else, and Zoe pointed out some good reasons not to do it, the fans. What, are you going to build a big grandstand at Oklahoma? You're going to ask these people over there at the main grandstand to sit on their hands and not watch any live racing for 2 or 3 consecutive off the turf races run across the street at Oklahoma. You got to put TV tower. That's not going to work. But Saratoga has 2 turf courses. It would be nice. It's a luxury to have 2 turf courses. Do they really need both turf courses? Why not convert the inner turf into Tapeta? Why you don't necessarily have to add a Tapeta track to the inside of the dirt track and the outer turf and the inner turf. Of course, there's no room then. But what if you just replace the inner turf with Tapeta and run it that way? To me, that's the only possible solution to the dilemma that they face with the weather year in and year out.
Good point.
So the Saratoga Jockeys race has gotten off to an interesting start. Irad Ortiz Jr. with 9 wins, brother Jose with 8, Flavien Prat with 6. And I proposed in my TDN Writers Room column that they should have a bet on who will be the leading jockey of the meet. Patrick McKenna from NTRA quickly told me it's impossible because under the statutes of the state, you can only have wagering on events involving equines. But go up to Albany and get that fixed. That shouldn't be any problem. I would have so much fun with this, especially in a year like this, where I think Erad's won the 3 previous years. This year, there's a 3-horse race for sure. And I think a lot will depend on who goes out of town on the weekends. For instance, who will be at the Haskell on Sunday. But I think Irad's going to get beat this time. I think Jose Ortiz has been riding just superbly. And he's really getting the attention of some really top trainers. And I think he's going to beat brother Irad for the riding title, for what it's worth.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, and Ortiz has won the Saratoga riding title 9 of the last 10 years. 6 of those were Irad, but 3 of those were Jose. I mean, the only jockey that interrupted that string was Luis Saez, who won the jockey title over Irad back in 2021. I mean, right now, for the record, Irad 9, Jose 8, and Flavien Prat 6, right? Unless Flavien puts on an absolute full court press, he and his agent, to ride in many more races than he usually does, ride in some of the cheaper races, maiden claiming races, whatever. It's going to be tough for Flavien to unseat Irad or Jose. He could do it. But last year, how are you going to have a better Saratoga meet than Flavien Prat had last year? Right? He won 14 graded stakes at Saratoga. He won 7 grade 1s at Saratoga. He was riding first call for Chad Brown, who was the runaway leading trainer. He won $6.6 million in purses, by far more than any other rider, including Irad. And he was still second in the jockey standings behind Irad. So I would make Irad a very slight favorite over Jose. And then a very slight favorite for second over Flavien. But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Don't you think, Zoe?
You should be at a better trifecta and get them in the correct order. That would be, the one to do. And I think that Flavien has Eclipse fever. That's what he's after, another Eclipse award. He already took down the Diana with a brilliant ride on Excellent Truth to beat the favorite. So he's got his first grade 1 at the meet. He's going to miss a couple of weekends because he's going to the Haskell on Saturday. The following weekend, he's going to be down to ride Nisos in the San Diego. So the chances of him being leading rider probably aren't going to happen. He's just looking for stakes wins.
And I made the rest of the field 12-1 if anybody's got a wise guy pick like Dylan Davis or something like that. Okay. So that is my take on that. That would be fun. They really should be a little bit more adventurous than that. And I don't see any reason why the New York Gaming Commission wouldn't let them do it if they asked.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, the PHBA. This weekend, the Pennsylvania Bred program was represented well at Saratoga by Concrete Glory, who won Saturday's 10th race. She's bred by the Bodemeister Syndicate and Kyle Horlacher. And the Pennsylvania Bred Concrete Glory was second in the Gulfstream Park Sprint Stakes earlier this year. Also, congratulations in order to UTCB Stud LLC, who leads in total breeder and stallion awards through April. So a third of the way through 2025, UTCB has 190,000 plus in those awards. Pennsylvania now has 8 breeders on pace for over 200,000 in total breeders awards, and 2 that could wind up hitting the $1 million mark. If you want to share in that $27 million total payout, just go to pabred.com or call 610-444-1050.
PA Bred, I think we've built a brand at this point.
It's excitement at every step.
Roses for Deborah just set a new track record.
On average, for the past decade, Pennsylvania paid over $28 million a year in breeders' awards, restricted races, and owner bonuses. Plus, PA Bred shine on the world's biggest stage. Just 3 states have bred more Breeders' Cup winners. Learn more at pabred.com.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses, with thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by First TV. First TV's work of the week is journalism, as he is now headed to the July 19th Haskell Stakes at Monmouth Park. And this was his first serious piece of work Saturday at Santa Anita in preparation for that. The Michael McCarthy trainee worked in company with Phosphorance. That's journalism on the outside there. Under Umbi Rispoli, they hit the wire in 1:12. That was his 3rd recorded workout at Santa Anita since exiting the Belmont Stakes.
So there were a ton of TDN Rising Stars over the weekend. This is what you get this time of year with Saratoga running and with Del Mar coming up. But there was one that was not only a horse that raced very strongly, very impressively, but a real sentimental story. And I'm talking about Dr. Agnew, who won at Saratoga last week in an off-the-track maiden race, is by Into Mischief out of Lady Eli. So that breeding right away just jumps right off the page. That's superstar breeding. I believe I read this. She was Lady Eli's first foal to win in North America. But if that's not correct, I apologize for that. But the thing that makes it so emotional is that the horse was named for Robert Agnew, who was the late veterinarian who was part of the team, was given credit for saving Lady Eli's life after she had laminitis. Dr. Agnew was struck by a car when he was bike riding in Vermont in 2015. And to not only name the horse after him, but have the horse turn out to be a good horse. That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool story. And his late wife was there to watch this horse cross the finish line in front. I actually looked at him as a yearling. He was sold to Eddie Woods, Quarter Pole Enterprises at the Keeneland September sale. And Eddie had put him in the OBS March sale. So I reached out to Eddie this morning. And, Eddie is one of my favorite people in the world. So I reached out and simply asked him, how did Madakat et al. Come to buy this horse? And he simply said, I have to read it to you. He said he prepped poorly in March in his pre-breeze, ran a fever the next day, but missed quite a bit of time. Eventually came back to his wonderful self after watching him work 3/8. They chased him hard, Cherie driving the car hard. And as they say, the rest is history. And they were obviously down there at the farm, saw him, Cherie's connection with Lady Eli. So I said, thanks, Eddie. Hope you're enjoying retirement somewhere on an island with an umbrella in your drink. And he texts back, yes, have an umbrella out on an island in Ireland, raining sideways today. So, he always liked him. I think he paid $185 for him. And he was supposed to be put in the OBS March sale, but he wasn't. And Cherie liked him, and they put together a team and bought him. He looks like a dirt horse, by the way. Like watching him at the Keeneland sale, like I looked up my notes today and it was like dirt, like just dirt. And he ran in an off the turf event. Now they keep saying that he's going to be better on the grass. I don't know. Unless he's really changed that much, because he looked more like Into Mischief than Lady Eli. But it'll be exciting to watch him. But to me, he looks physically like an Into Mischief dirt horse.
I wish you guys wouldn't do this to me. You turn me into the curmudgeon here sometimes, right? Look, he better be better on the turf. He got a 47 Beyer speed figure.
I didn't realize that. Okay,
47. I didn't.
TDN Rising Stars.
Hey, I don't make the TDN Rising Stars, obviously. I didn't feel like spending 3 hours to go back down a rabbit hole to see if it was the slowest maiden special weight at Saratoga in the last 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. It might have been. It was a very slow race. So, look, I mean, it's an unbelievable story. In all aspects. Lady Eli, the name of the horse, Cherie, one of the best trainers in America, and her past connection with Lady Eli. But let's get this horse on the turf and see how he runs. And if he can't run any better on the turf, any faster on the turf than he ran when he broke his maiden, then I don't know, that TDN Rising Star designation is not going to take him very far.
Randy, I'm going to throw you a softball, and you're not going to have to become the bad guy or the curmudgeon here, because I know you and I both know Steve Kornacki very well. And the Jockey Club named him to be the keynote speaker at the Jockey Club Roundtable. And I think this was a brilliant pick. I'm not just saying this because I really know and like Steve, and I once was partners with him on a 5-claimer at Parks who ran slower than your horse you were just lame passing a couple of weeks ago. But anyways, and the reason why I like that, and you can speak to this as much, if not more so than I do, because you work with him on these races. He's a fan. I mean, he is a super fan. He knows the game. He knows the business. He knows the broadcasting game. Obviously, he's a rising star in his own field. But I think you get him to the racetrack and he lights up like a Christmas tree. He really knows what he's doing. But I hope he brings the fans' perspective to the round table and talks about how, you can do better and what needs to be done for the fans. I haven't talked to him about this. I don't know what he's planning on saying, but it was a very good choice, Steve Kornacki.
Oh, I totally agree. Just an awesome guy. Just, unbelievably enthusiastic about the sport. Very analytical. Obviously, that's his job in politics, using all the data. He's very data driven. I know one of his beliefs that he'll probably espouse at the roundtable is that all past performances in thoroughbred racing should be free for the fans. Mm-hmm. He thinks that's very important. And he thinks once you get those past performances in the hands of people like him that don't know that much about horse racing, but love the analytical perspective of things, then you'll turn a lot of those people into fans when they get a chance to see all the data in front of them that can be taken in so many different ways. Just a story about Steve that just kind of illustrates what a fan he is and how enthusiastic he is. I'm sure he's in mourning right now over the loss of D. Wayne Lucas. He was probably the number one super fan out there of Lucas. We talked about that when we did our Lucas podcast. Wayne had a lot of super fans, but Steve Kornacki, if not at the top, he had to be very near the top of that list. But he had never met him. And then at the Preakness Stakes 2 years ago, Wayne was there, and we orchestrated a sit down off camera, just one morning with between Steve and Wayne Lucas. And I went to Wayne on the backside and told him, I don't think Wayne really knew who Steve Kornacki was, to be honest with you. Said tomorrow morning, we're going to bring Kornacki over. And I think Laurie might have helped Wayne do a little research on Steve Kornacki, because the next morning, Wayne was all in and knew exactly who Steve was and was all excited about it. And to watch Steve sit down next to Wayne in a chair outside the tack room at Pimlico in the stakes barn and talk to him for 30 minutes or 45 minutes and just start ticking off Wayne's best horses. And Wayne was kind of struggling that morning, and he lit up like a Christmas tree and it was wonderful. And Steve was so excited to be able to sit down next to his idol and talk about that. But I think it's an inspired choice by the Jockey Club as well.
How do I get a ticket?
You can have mine.
I'd love to go. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it'll be on video too. The Jockey Club will post it all on video, so you'll be able to watch. He's one of two keynote speakers, but it's going to be fun to hear him talk about the sport that he loves so much.
Who's the other one? Do we know?
I did know about an hour ago, and now I've been going down rabbit holes, and that's totally escaped. Totally escaped me.
So some sad news out of Canada last week. Patches O'Houlihan, the 2024 Horse of the Year in Canada, and a very big fan favorite. After winning the stakes race, I think it was the Highlander Stakes, he suffered a soft tissue injury and had to be euthanized. And they put in the press release, he possessed outstanding heart and desire and was as honest as they come. This is like, it's like you have horses that, okay, he's not going to win the Eclipse Award and he's not going to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but you fall in love with them because they're so cool and they're so, tough and hard knocking. And not to mention having a great name. Patches O'Houlihan was the coach for the Average Joe's team in dodgeball. Now, what makes the story even more remarkable is same trainer, same owner campaigned a horse called by the name of Pink Lloyd, who virtually had the exact same career, winning everything on sprinting up in Canada. Neither one of these horses ever ran outside of Canada. They retired Pink Lloyd. He has a beautiful home on retirement, one of those retirement farms out in Ontario. But yeah, and this Bob Tiller is if you never met him, you should take a chance to chat with him. Very nice guy, very knowledgeable. And I just feel, you always feel horrible for people when this happens, but to lose the Horse of the Year and a fan favorite, that was, not a good story.
No, and Patches O'Houlihan won the Pink Lloyd Stakes last year at Woodbine. They handle both of those horses so carefully. Patches O'Houlihan, you said 16 career starts, won 13 out of 16, never left Woodbine, never raced at any other track besides Woodbine. He ran on synthetic and he ran on turf. And really, his last race in the Highlander was just an illustration, an unfortunate illustration, but it was completely emblematic of what Patches O'Houlihan was all about. He set the early pace. He opened up early, When he got to about the 5/16 pole, he started trying to bear out. At the quarter pole, he was trying to bear out badly on the lead, and he was being challenged at that point. He was head and head. It was obvious that something was amiss with Patches O'Houlihan. And all the way down the stretch, he was bearing out, getting out a little further from the rail, wouldn't run in a straight line, trying to get off his left side. Clearly, he wasn't the normal Patches O'Houlihan, and yet he refused to lose. He wound up winning that race by a neck immediately after the race. And they hadn't even gotten to the turn yet. He was pulled up, had to be taken back in an ambulance, and he had suffered a severe suspensory injury, probably at the top of the stretch when he tried to bear out to begin with. The horse had to be in a lot of discomfort, and yet he gutted it out and he won anyway. It's so unfortunate that that this happened, but what a way to go out showing the guts that made that horse a legend in Canada.
Yeah, went out a winner, like a true champion that he was. And that was a couple of weeks ago. So they tried everything to try and save this horse. They just couldn't. But great name, great story, great trainer, great ownership group. And like some wise man once told me, no good horse has ever had a bad name. Like, if you think about Pink Floyd, Patches O'Houlihan, think about the really good horses that we've had as horses of the year. No good horse has a bad name. You give
Little E.T.
Oh, well, that wasn't that
bad. All right. So overseas, the sales action took place in Japan. And so you are a resident sales expert. What were the stories coming out of the big yearling sale in Japan last week?
Yeah, well, it was actually, I think Tuesday they sold the foals, and on Monday they sold the yearlings. It was the JRHA Select Yearling and Foal Sale. If you follow Kenny McPhee on Twitter, you would have seen him and his wife and his daughter went over there. They were invited over there and just went through the whole process. They went and saw Swiss Skydiver and her foal, and just, it was an eye-opener to watch how they do the sales over there. So I would encourage anyone to take a look at Kenny McPeak's Twitter and take a look at some of it, or follow Emma Berry, because she's been there throughout and wrote some really good articles. I wrote down some of the cliff notes just to give you guys a little bit of an idea. And these are just basically about the yearlings that were sold. They had 227 yearlings cataloged. They sold 225. Only 2 of them were RNA'd, which is huge. That's a 99% clearance. All those yearlings sold for $105.6 million, up 7.2%. There were 60 to 70 new buyers. Yoshida Farm, of course, we've heard a lot about them in the news. They had 40% of the yearlings sold, and rightly so, because they bought every good mare that we've ever had in North America. Kitasan Black, he's one of their new emerging stallions. He was responsible for the top 2 lots. They sold for 2.8 and 2.78 million. There were a total of 11 Kitasan Blacks sold for an average price of 1.5 million. And then John Stewart, 2 days after pulling the upset with Excellent Truth in the Grade 1 Diana, of course, he was over there and picked up a son of Kitasan Black, a filly, actually, out of Photo Call. You might recall Photo Call, originally trained by Graham Motion. She first made headlines when she made $3 million at the Keeneland November sale. She was then sold 4 years later for 2.7 to Yoshida Farms. So she went over there. So he bought one of her foals to bring back over here stateside to try and bring some of this American blood over there. A half brother to one of your favorite horses, sold Forever Young, sold to, of course, Yoshida Yahagi for $2 million. So hopefully we get to see him. The first yearling by Flightline sold anywhere in the world. That son of Selflessly, who was a grade 2 winner over here, sold for $2 million. Average price for the 3 Flightline yearlings, $1 million each. So we'll see some of them sold later this year. A Midnight Bisou foal sold last night for, I think, like $3.4 million. The foal out of her. So all of these wonderful mares that go over there, you can see why they're bringing so much more money. And another thing that Emma Berry put in her column was the transparency that they have over there that I'd like to see over here at some of the U.S. sales. The reserves, usually you're talking behind closed doors and trying to figure out what the reserve is for a horse. These are freely available, along with the height, the weight, the girth, and the cannon bone length of each yearling sold is available on the website. So all this information is readily available for you, and the inspection process is second to none. I thought it was just really intriguing. Like, I would love to go over there and just do what Kenny McPeak did. Obviously, I'm not a Kentucky Derby and Oaks trainer, so I'm not going to get invited, but just go and have a look at it. I am fascinated.
Why don't we do a show on the road from Japan?
Let's do it.
Where's Sue? Let's go.
Land of the rising thoroughbreds.
Right? Absolutely. Boy, wouldn't that be fun?
The TDN Writers Room also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds in Saturday's opener at Saratoga. It was deja vu as Curtain Call delivered a dominant performance. The 2-year-old drew off to win by 8.5 lengths. Remember, just a week earlier, we were telling you about Ewing, another West Point horse, 2-year-old who broke his maidens stylishly. Both Curtain Call and Ewing run for the team of West Point and trainer Mark Cassie, and both were ridden by jockey Jose Ortiz. Curtain Call is now being pointed for the Hopeful Stakes on Saratoga's closing day, September the 1st.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
So that is a wrap on this week's show. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss and Zoe Cadman. I want to thank our Gainesway guest of the week, Tom Rooney, as well as the people who work behind the scenes and help us put it all together and do such a great job. Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.